Wolf finds a baby in car accident. He brings her to the wood, and the unthinkable happens. Sometimes, animals can truly astonish us. This wolf discovers a baby at the scene of a car accident and, driven by instinct, carries her into the woods. What happens next is beyond belief. An eerie silence hung in the air, broken only by the sounds of the woods and birds, until the sudden, deafening crash of a car tumbling down an embankment shattered the calm. The car had blown a tire, causing the woman to lose control. It veered off the road and began rolling. As it hit the gravel and tumbled down the short hill, the woman was thrown from the vehicle. There was a deafening sound of metal crumpling, followed by the sharp cries of a baby and the shattering of glass. Finally, the car came to a halt, and an eerie silence followed. Even the baby had stopped crying, seemingly in shock. The woman groaned, unconscious and in pain, but unable to focus enough to wake herself. Worry for her baby lingered, but she couldn't act. Smoke began to fill the air, and though the car seat was partially ejected from the vehicle, the baby remained securely fastened in it. It lay on its side. Then suddenly, something strange happened. A wolf came out of the woods. It stood and smelled the air, then went over to the mother. The wolf detected the scent of blood and sensed her deteriorating condition. Next, it moved to the car seat situated near the car, with the smoke from the hood intensifying. The wolf gripped the car seat and tugged at it, prompting the baby to cry once more. As the wolf examined the baby, the mother stirred from her slumber, catching sight of the massive wolf standing near her child. Then she caught sight of the wolf, its teeth exposed menacingly. She wanted to scream, but the woman lost consciousness again. What she didn't see was the wolf diligently gnawing at the straps that held the baby in place. Once the baby was free, the wolf gently lifted her by her clothing and carried her off into the woods. Meanwhile, the woman had a mobile app that could automatically alert the police and emergency services in the event of a car accident. Help arrived just as the car began to ignite in the woods. Bradley Harris, a search and rescue expert, was the first on the scene and quickly assessed the situation. Unable to approach the burning vehicle, he spotted the woman on a hill, barely breathing. He knew moving her could cause serious injury, so he waited for the ambulance. Once she was stabilized, she began calling for Janet, and it was then they realized there was another person in the crash. As the woman continued asking for her baby, they radioed for help to search for the child. Bradley, regretting not checking earlier, returned to the scene. The fire had been put out, but he noticed drag marks leading away from the vehicle, offering a glimmer of hope that the baby might have survived. Determined, he followed these marks and eventually discovered the car seat hidden among some bushes. The relief was immense. If the car seat had been too close to the vehicle, it could have posed a severe risk to the baby due to smoke and fumes. However, somehow it had been pulled a significant distance away from the burning car, giving little Janet a fighting chance. Ready to pick the baby up and take her home, he flipped the car seat over. To his astonishment, there was no baby in the seat. What's more, the safety belt on the car seat had been crudely cut with jagged edges. It was a baffling scene. The baby had vanished. As Bradley conducted his investigation, he came across a chilling sight. Bradley spotted massive paw prints, unmistakably from a very large wolf. If a wolf had taken the baby, was it already too late to help? He decided to follow the tracks, hoping for the best but preparing for closure if needed. The thought of failure was too painful, so he focused on the possibility that the baby was safe. Informing his team of his mission, Bradley set out quickly with a backpack of essential gear. He followed the wolf's trail as far as daylight allowed, but as darkness fell, he had no choice but to stop. Armed with a flashlight, he knew that missing any clues could mean losing the baby for good. Bradley couldn't bear the thought of retreating to his comfortable, warm bed while a baby was out there in the darkness. He was determined not to waste time by returning home and then coming back. Instead, he would wait right there until the first light of morning. After informing his team of his intentions, he established a makeshift camp. Bradley was determined to find Janet quickly, but the cold and constant wolf calls kept him on edge, fearing for the baby's survival. Meanwhile, Janet's mother, despite severe head injuries, was miraculously free of spinal damage and in an induced coma for recovery. Bradley was relieved they didn't have to tell her baby was lost in the woods. Janet's father, anxious to search himself, was reassured that professionals were handling it, though he struggled to stay by his wife's side. This rescue mission was unlike any Bradley had faced, as he was searching for a helpless baby completely dependent on him. As soon as it was light enough, Bradley set out again, following the wolf's tracks, though overlapping prints made it difficult to stay on course. Despite his experience, he knew he had to be cautious. He was just one man. In the event of a wolf pack attacking him, Bradley knew he wouldn't stand much of a chance. Moreover, if the wolves sensed any threat to their offspring, they would likely react aggressively. But he wasn't thinking of his own safety. He needed to find the child. With trembling hands and a racing heart, he cautiously illuminated the den with his flashlight, anxious about both the wolves and the potential discovery he might make. Bradley was desperate to find the baby, but he couldn't shake his fear of what he might discover. How bad would her condition be? Would the accident leave scars on their hearts? He had to push past his own worries and keep going. The first den he checked was abandoned, with spider webs in the entrance. It wasn't where the wolves had been recently, and it cost him valuable time. As he continued, the overlapping paw prints made it hard to track the right wolf, but he couldn't afford to lose the trail now. Going back to where he had last seen the tracks, he carefully moved forward, determined not to lose the lead. At last, he came out from the other end, still knowing which paw prints to look out for. He could keep tracking. As he moved further, the terrain started to become a lot more familiar. He had come from the opposite end of the woods, but this was for sure an area he had explored before. He had even been out in these woods, saving a bunch of teenagers on an adventure before. The woods seemed easy to navigate, but one wrong move could make you lose the trail and get lost. Park officials had set up cabins with basic supplies for situations like this, offering a place to rest or resupply. But that didn't help Bradley now. Wolves didn't know about safety cabins, or did they? The tracks weren't leading to any cabins, but up into the mountains. Bradley was shocked when he realized the wolf was heading toward a remote cabin usually occupied by park rangers or biologists. Wolves were shy creatures, so why would this one head toward people? To his surprise, the cabin had been abandoned for months, leaving the wolf to find no one there. Having a good idea of where he was going helped Bradley move a lot faster. The wolf had found the baby after the car accident, and then he had brought her into the woods. But now the unthinkable was going to happen. He reached the clearing where the cabin was built, and there, on the porch, he found something that would change his outlook forever. He expected to find a wolf that had harmed the baby, but what he saw was a wolf napping in the sun, and tucked in its side was a tiny baby. She wasn't crying, and that worried Bradley. He wanted to get her medical treatment as quickly as he could, but first, he had to get her away from the wolf who was cuddling her like she was a puppy. Then something unexpected happened. When the wolf saw Bradley, it stood up and Bradley braced for aggression, pulling out his flare gun. But the wolf didn't attack. Instead, it glanced at the baby, stepped off the porch, and walked away. The wolf seemed to be trying to reunite the baby with humans who could care for her, not harm her. In hindsight, Bradley realized the wolf had never been a threat. It had saved the baby. After pulling her from the burning vehicle, the wolf likely thought the mother wouldn't survive and had taken the baby to find help. At the forest's edge, the wolf paused, looked at the baby one last time, then left. Bradley rushed over to the baby, who, despite the cold, was warm from the wolf's protective cuddles. The wolf's empathy was truly remarkable. But that didn't mean the baby was safe. She had no bite marks or anything that showed the wolf being rough with her, but she did have bruises from the car accident. What if she had internal injuries? They had to get her to the hospital as soon as possible. Bradley had just picked her up when something horrifying happened. The baby stopped breathing, and there was no time to hike out of the woods. Bradley immediately began mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Her heart was still faintly beating, so he didn't need to perform chest compressions, which relieved him given his size and concern about causing further harm. After a few breaths, the baby started breathing again. Not taking any chances, Bradley called for help and then hiked to a nearby clearing with the baby. As he walked, he noticed the wolf following them, still seeming intent on ensuring the baby's safety. Having the wolf nearby should have been unsettling, but in an odd way, it was comforting. Bradley had saved many lives in his career, but this felt different. He wasn't alone in caring for the little life. But looking down at the tiny, fragile little girl in his arms, he had never been more afraid in his life. It was a massive relief when the chopper arrived with paramedics in it. Bradley could hand the baby over, and they could get her to the hospital where her anxious family awaited her arrival. The baby had a few injuries, but they could all be fixed relatively easily. If it hadn't been for the help of a man and a wolf, things might have turned out differently. A few days later, the mother was brought out of her induced coma, and the first face she saw was her husband's, gently holding Janet. The baby, happily chewing on her hands, looked as perfect as any baby could be. The baby was safe, and the mother was on her way to a full recovery. The family later asked to meet Bradley to thank him in person. Seeing the baby happy and smiling in her mother's arms brought tears to the big man's eyes. A few months later, the couple did something else to show their gratitude. Bradley took them to the old cabin where he had found the wolf and the baby, sharing the place where it all began. The family, searching for answers, paused when Bradley noticed a movement. There, standing at the edge of the forest, was the wolf. It stared at the baby and watched them all intently for a few moments. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, it disappeared back into the woods. The wolf had seen that the baby it saved was healthy and well, and for that, the family would forever be grateful to both Bradley and the wolf. What an incredible story! If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. See you in the next video.